There we go.
Ron Williams never imagined he'd have to tell his son he lost everything he'd saved up to someone he never met.
At first, I was devastated and I felt stupid.
This right here is Ron Williams, a 76-year-old retired man from Brooklyn who spent his whole life building something, working and saving until he had $1.6 million sitting in his account and felt like he could finally breathe. And then a woman he met over text took every single dollar of it.
At this point, do you think Jenny is even a real person?
At this point, I'm wondering, but I'm so deeply in terms of money that I'm praying that it is true.
Her name was Jenny, and she told him she was 33, a Christian, living in Boston, and genuinely interested in him. But Jenny was never real, and by the time Ron was forced to accept that truth, there was nothing left to do but sit down and try to explain to his son how everything he had worked for was gone. Stay with us, because by the end of this video, you will understand exactly how this was pulled off, who was really behind it, and what you need to know before this happens to someone close to you.
Williams' son then made his own AI-generated video of Jenny to show him just how easy it is.
I felt this incredible connection.
Williams accepted he'd been scammed and reported it to police and the FBI.
Ron Williams is not the type of person most people would picture when they think about someone falling for an online scam. He spent his whole career as an insurance agent in Brooklyn, New York, which is the kind of job where you spend every single day thinking carefully about risk, reading people, and making smart decisions with money. By the time he retired, he had saved approximately $1.6 million, a full lifetime of disciplined work sitting in his account, waiting to be passed down to his son. He was not careless or slow, he was just lonely. And as it turns out, loneliness is really the only door a scammer needs to walk through. It started with a random text message that arrived on his phone from someone he had never heard of before. The person on the other end called herself Jenny, and she said she was 33 years old, a Christian, and living in Boston. There was no context or mutual connection. She sent him videos and photos of herself. The conversation started out light, just regular back and forth that felt natural, and over time, they became more personal and more frequent.
Jenny sending this video and saying she was 33, Christian, and living in Boston.
It was easy communication. It felt very comfortable.
That word he used, comfortable, is doing a lot of work in that sentence, because that is exactly the feeling these operations are designed to create. They are not trying to pressure you or rush you. The whole point is to settle into your life so gradually that by the time anything feels off, you are already emotionally tied in, and the money has already started moving.
Jenny was not pushing Ron anywhere. She was just showing up consistently every day, being warm and attentive, building something that felt completely real to him. He later described it as an incredible connection, and from where he was standing, he had no reason to think otherwise. What Ron did not know at the time is that this kind of fraud has a name that the people who run it actually use among themselves. It is called pig butchering, a term that comes from a Chinese phrase meaning roughly fatten the pig before you slaughter it. And the name describes exactly how the whole thing works. You build someone up slowly through friendship and romance, keep them trusting and comfortable, and then, when the moment is right, you drain them completely. The people behind these operations are not improvising. They work from tested scripts and systems that have been refined across thousands of victims over years, and they are extremely patient. After a few weeks of conversation, Jenny started bringing up money. She told Ron she had been making a lot of money through investing and wanted him to join her on what she described as a high-performing investment platform. She framed it as something they could do together as a couple, which was a deliberate choice on the scammer's part. Investing alone feels risky. Investing alongside someone you trust and care about feels like a partnership, like something safe and shared.
Jenny soon told Williams she was making a fortune investing and asked him to join her. Within about 6 months, he'd invested $1.6 million.
The platform itself looked completely legitimate. It had a professional interface with a personal dashboard, login credentials, charts that updated in real time, and a balance that kept growing every time he checked it. Ron could log in whenever he wanted and watch what appeared to be his money increasing. None of that was real, and no actual investments were ever being made on his behalf, but the fake numbers were doing exactly what they were built to do. They made him feel like he was winning, and they made him want to put in more.
He could see his money growing on the platform. But William's son had suspicions.
What made all of this believable in a way that older scams never were is that Jenny did not feel like a profile picture and some text. NYPD financial crimes detective Daniel Alessandrino explained exactly why that matters when NBC asked him about the role artificial intelligence is now playing in these operations.
Now with AI, they're giving you realistic videos and it looks like you're really talking to the person.
He says never invest or send money to someone you haven't met, and report these scams right away to give investigators a chance to recover stolen money.
That is the thing that separates what is happening now from what people used to think of as online scams. The old version was easy to spot because it relied on stolen photos, bad grammar, and stories that did not quite add up. What AI can do now is generate a completely photorealistic video of a person who does not exist, someone who looks and moves naturally, someone you feel like you are getting to know over time. NBC itself acknowledged they could not confirm whether Jenny's videos were real footage or entirely AI generated. And honestly, that ambiguity is the whole point. Whether Jenny ever existed as a real human being does not matter. What mattered to the scammers is that Ron believed she did, and that belief cost him $1.6 million and his entire retirement. Ron's son had suspicions from day one. The moment his father brought up Jenny, something about the situation bothered him immediately.
Part of what's hard is from the very first moment he tells me about Jenny, and he's like, you ever get one of these messages? Yeah, all the time. And they're all fake. We had the suspicion, but not the evidence.
But suspicion alone is not enough to break through when someone has already built a real emotional attachment. Ron was deep in it, emotionally and financially, and what was about to happen next would make both of those things far worse than either of them realized. By the time Ron tried to take his money out, the fake platform was showing him a balance of approximately $4 million. That number was entirely made up, a fabricated figure sitting on a screen controlled by the same people who built Jenny's persona. But as far as Ron could see, he had put in $1.6 million and watched it grow into something much larger. So he tried to withdraw it, and that is exactly when the trap closed.
And when Williams wanted to take out his money, some $4 million, Jenny said he'd have to send more money to cover the taxes. That's when alarm bells started going off.
Demanding additional money to cover taxes or fees before withdrawal is one of the most common moves in this type of scam, and it works precisely because of the size of the fake balance. When someone believes they are sitting on $4 million, paying a fee to unlock it feels like a reasonable thing to do. Ron had been watching that number grow for months. The logic, as twisted as it was, made sense to him at that moment. But Jenny had also been setting up a second trap that was even more personal than the first.
Months into the relationship, Jenny told him she lent him $110,000 for a big investment opportunity. When he tried to pay her back, the wire transfer to China was blocked. So Williams agreed to meet a runner in his home and handed him a bag with $110,000 in cash.
A runner, which is basically a cash courier working for the scam network, came directly to Ron's home in Brooklyn. Ron handed him a bag with $110,000 in cash. And yet, even at that point, some part of him was starting to feel something was wrong. He had asked Jenny many times over the course of their relationship to meet him in person, and every single time there was a reason why it could not happen.
Did you ever ask to meet her in person?
Several times.
There was always an excuse to not meet in person.
Right.
At this point, do you think Jenny is even a real person?
At this point, I'm wondering, but I'm so deeply in terms of money that I'm praying that it is true.
But he had already moved $1.6 million into this platform and handed a stranger $110,000 in cash. And the weight of all of that made it almost impossible to accept the truth. Because accepting the truth meant there was no money left, and no Jenny, and nothing to show for any of it. His son, meanwhile, had moved from suspicion to actual investigation. He ran a reverse image search on the photos and videos Jenny had been sending his father, and what he found was significant. The same images and videos were appearing across multiple unrelated social media accounts, which meant the content had either been stolen from a real person and distributed, or generated specifically for this purpose and used across many fake profiles at the same time.
Then the son did something that finally broke through all of Ron's hope and doubt at once. He sat down, went to a free website, and in about 3 minutes built his own AI-generated video of a woman who looked strikingly similar to Jenny. Then he showed it to his father.
William's son then made his own AI-generated video of Jenny to show him just how easy it is.
I felt this incredible connection.
Williams accepted he'd been scammed and reported it to police and the FBI.
This is not the work of some supercoder. This took me 3 minutes on a site that didn't even charge me money to do it, and that's super scary.
He accepted what had happened. He reported everything to the NYPD and the FBI. And then he had to do the hardest thing of all, which was sit down and tell his son that the $1.6 million he had been saving for decades was gone. As of the time of this reporting, the money has not been recovered. In cases like this, the funds move fast and far through cryptocurrency, money mules, and across international borders, which makes tracking them extremely difficult, even when law enforcement is actively investigating. NBC reached out to Jenny for comment and got no response, which honestly was not surprising, given that she almost certainly does not exist. Ron's son carries a specific kind of guilt that is hard to shake. He works in tech and knew what these scams looked like.
The irony is not lost on Williams that he works in tech and was unable to help his dad sooner.
That's also the deep guilt that I carry is like, I got some answers, man. It's like, we could have talked about this.
So he's now using what his family learned
How do we fight this?
to build an app to help people identify scams.
He is now building an app to help people recognize scams before they go too deep, taking everything that broke his family and trying to turn it into something that protects the next one. As for Ron, he chose to tell his story publicly because he wanted to warn other people. And because when NBC asked him why he had sent all that money in the first place, what he said was simple and devastating.
The thing that was the most gut-wrenching was when I asked him what you did it for, and he shared, it was because I wanted to leave you something. Like, he's the gift. This is all we want.
Now, here is the part of this story that most people do not talk about. And it is the part that makes all of this even more complicated than it already looks. When you picture the person on the other end of one of these scams, the one sending the messages and running the fake persona, you probably imagine some cold, calculating criminal sitting comfortably somewhere. But that picture is often not accurate, and the NBC investigation that broke Ron's story proves it. Arnold is 22 years old and comes from Uganda. NBC found him through Amnesty International, and he agreed to speak publicly because he said too many people are still trapped, and the world needs to know what is actually going on inside these operations. He would not give his last name because he is genuinely afraid for his safety. His story started the same way it starts for a lot of young men across Africa, which is that he was struggling, he needed income, and someone came to him with what looked like a real job opportunity. He paid $2,000 to a recruitment agency that promised to place him in legitimate work abroad, and they sent him to Cambodia.
22-year-old Arnold from Uganda connected with us through Amnesty International. He asked us not to reveal his full name because he fears for his safety. But Arnold says he paid $2,000 to a job agency that sent him to a scam compound like this one in Cambodia.
What was waiting for him in Cambodia was not a job. It was a compound, a large, secured facility where people trafficked from Uganda, other parts of Africa, South Asia, and Southeast Asia are held against their will and forced to run the exact same kind of romance and investment scams that destroyed Ron's retirement. These places operate like factories. Workers are given scripts and fake personas, they are assigned targets to pursue on social media, and they're required to hit daily quotas. If they fall short, they get beaten.
Arnold spent about 6 months inside that compound before he was released. And he says he thinks about the people he was forced to deceive even now. Not because he chose to do it, but because he lived on both sides of the same crime at the same time, trapped inside the machine while people like Ron were being drained on the outside.
After about 6 months, Arnold says he was released and often thinks about his victims.
They just saw me as the devil. I do not blame them, but the people in those companies are also just victims who are under immense pressure of life and death. And when they return, because they do not earn anything, life even becomes harder to them, just as the people that have lost their properties and money.
Detective Alessandrino from the NYPD confirmed that this is a reality investigators now have to account for when they look at these cases.
And he says in some cases, the scammers themselves are victims.
They're victims of human trafficking, where they have these compounds and they lure people on job opportunities. They torture them unless they provide by doing these cons.
So what you are actually looking at here is a system that runs on two types of desperation at the same time. Ron had money and was lonely. Arnold had nothing and needed work. NBC's reporting frames both of them as perfect targets for the same global criminal network. One group feeding victims into the machine from one end, the other group being forced to run the machine from the other end. An organized crime sitting at the center, collecting from both sides. The Cambodian government has said it is taking steps to shut down these operations and has denied being part of the problem. And thousands of trafficked workers have been released from scam centers recently, but the operations are still running. Arnold chose to speak publicly because people need to know this is not over.
Why do you want to speak out about what happened to you?
Majorly because there are a lot of people who are still there, who need help. But also this work is still going on, so there are more people who are being affected through these schemes who may need to learn about all this.
Before we close, here is what you need to actually know to keep yourself and the people around you safe, because these scams are not slowing down, and the technology behind them is only getting better. The first thing to understand is that these scams almost always start the same way. A random message from someone you have never met who quickly becomes warm, personal, and consistent. If a stranger texts or messages you out of nowhere and the conversation very quickly becomes close and emotional, that is your first signal to slow down. The second thing is to never send money or invest through a platform that was introduced to you by someone you met online, regardless of how well you feel you know them or how much you trust them. Real investment platforms do not get recommended to you through a romantic connection with a stranger. That is not how legitimate finance works. If someone you have only ever talked to online will not meet you on a real video call or in person after months of conversation, and there is always a reason why it cannot happen, that is not a busy schedule. That is a red flag.
Do a reverse image search on any photos or videos you receive from someone you have not met face to face. If the same images show up on multiple unrelated accounts, you are looking at a fake persona. And if a platform is showing you amazing profits, but then says you owe taxes or fees before you can take your money out, stop immediately. That is the scam asking you for one final payment before it disappears. Do not pay it. If any of this has happened to you or someone close to you, report it right away to the FBI at ic3.gov and to the FTC at reportfraud.ftc.gov. The faster you report, the better the chance that investigators can do something about it. Do not sit on it out of embarrassment, because Juan's situation shows that nobody is too smart or too careful to be caught by this when the emotional setup is done right. If this video opened your eyes, do something with that. Share it with someone in your family, especially an older relative who spends time online, because the people running these scams are specifically looking for them. Drop a comment below telling us where you are watching from and whether you or anyone you know has ever come across something that felt like this. And if you want to see more stories like this one, tap that card, because we have got cases that will make this one look mild. I will see you there.